The broader effects of poor management, brought to you by Eric, Sanjay, Paul, Benjamin, David, and Alexander. In 2017, under a corporate-wide initiative, IKEA restructured management roles to try to match employees to new roles within their organization. The manager detailed in this case report, who we will call Chris, was promoted to a new role at her local store. This new team is much larger than her previous team, and it is comprised of other managers. She had previously been underperforming in her past role, and it was unclear why she was chosen for this new position. Because of her lack of leadership and the conflicts that she created within her role, she spread toxicity throughout her local store. This behavior resulted in lower than expected growth for the entire store. She is still focused on performing as if she was in her previous role, and she has yet to adapt to her new role or the new organizational structure. Because Chris's role is interconnected to the entire store, she has a reciprocal independence to other departments. When her department fails to achieve a task or project on time, other departments that rely on her also fail. Over time, the entire organization suffers from the lack of cohesiveness. Management has attempted to provide her with constructive criticism, but so far, she has failed to take the initiative and perform to standard. Chris's situation is still ongoing. Her managers are working to coach her through this new role, but so far, their efforts have failed. Our group debated several different organizational behavior and human resources issues that could be addressed, and in the end, we settled on the two that seemed to get to the heart of the issue: her leadership and the conflict that she caused. Our team chose this case over the other case studies because it represented a broad impact on the function of an organization. Other case studies discussed interactions with smaller groups of employees, including one-on-one interactions and organizational behavior and human resources topics that dealt with interpersonal relationships. And the impact that she has as a manager has implications to the performance of the entire organization. None of her direct supervisors chose her for this role. She was selected for this role by senior management. We argue that she is not a strong fit for this leadership position, and her behavior negatively impacts the performance of her team. First topic we're going to discuss related to organizational behavior is Chris's demonstrated lack of leadership. Bruce said, "Leadership is a process of social influence which maximizes the effort of others towards the achievement of a goal." Chris's lack of leadership has led to high turnover within her department, poor productivity, and low morale within her IKEA location. Chris fails to understand that her lack of self-awareness has a profound effect on her department. It is understandable that the attitudes and behaviors of Chris's subordinates resonate from her leadership aesthetic. Therefore, the organizational justice within IKEA provided the overall fairness. As a result, the decisional protocol failed. Chris was capable of self-analysis and had received some leadership development. She may have been able to improve her team's morale and increase her team's communication. Another key area of leadership that Chris fails in is communication. Every leader must be able to communicate clearly with their team efficiently and effectively. Because every department relies on Chris and her team, the lack of communication within her department has led to timelines for other departments to slip and the organization as a whole to suffer. When these situations arise, she fails to communicate both down the chain of command and back up to her supervisors so that everyone involved knows the situation at hand. Her lack of active listening skills, concentrating on the true meaning of what others are saying, has resulted in damaging relationships due to misunderstanding within her team. Final deficiency Chris shows in leadership is a lack of interpersonal skills. It's necessary for all managers to understand that their subordinates trust and value their efforts. This is otherwise known as psychological contract. Chris has not shown her team that she values their efforts, and they now view her as untrustworthy. It has resulted in high turnover within her department. For the word conflict, we often have a negative perception of the word. However, there are different types of conflict. Functional conflict can lead to healthy disputes between employees in a work environment. Unfortunately, in our case study, the conflict that revolves around Chris is dysfunctional and is negatively affecting IKEA. Chris's inability to see her shortcomings as a manager and to agree with her management on a performance management structure to improve her performance has led to dysfunctional conflict with her management and her employees. When analyzing the conflict that conflict revolves around Chris and the organization, it is important to determine the root cause of Chris's current behavior and where it came from. When IKEA restricted their organization and promoted Chris into a role with greater responsibility, they failed to take into account her performance in her previous position. There were signs that she was not capable of a leadership position when she only managed 3 people. One of the options is to continue working with Chris and aid her in her development of becoming a successful IKEA manager in her role. The other option is to work with human resources and develop a performance review plan that eventually leads to better performance. One of the biggest reasons for conflict between Chris and her management is because she did not trust him. She feels that her management is working on a way of removing her from her company. This is far from the truth, because her management's goal is to help her succeed in her new role. As stated in the paper, one of the biggest drivers of conflict is when people misinterpret others' intentions. Chris's lack of trust with her teams she manages has also led to conflict. Chris's misinterpretations of performance reviews have led her and her subordinates into further conflict with management. She gives most of her important tasks to 1 or 2 of her employees who she believes are the best workers. As a result, this alienates the rest of her team. To add further insult to injury, the 2 team members she selects are typically underperformers in the rest of the team. It is important to give all team members special projects, recognition, and honest feedback. This has led to conflict, low team morale, high turnover, and a lack of results that she experiences within her current teams. Although avoiding situations that will lead to conflict with Chris may seem easier, it is not an effective strategy for IKEA to use. The strategy of avoidance is not a fair approach to Chris or for the team she manages. If Chris's current behavior continues as it is, the conflict within the team she manages will only grow. Chris's management needs to make it clear that they are working with Chris to make her improve upon her new role. They need to make it clear that the feedback she receives is not a harmful manner, but a constructive manner. Once this conflict is confronted and it is determined where it had originated from, Chris needs to be given specific instructions as how to manage her position. Providing honest feedback and support in a performance review program may not be the easiest path, as we stated earlier. However, it is crucial in turning Chris's current conflict with IKEA from dysfunctional positive experience. Chris needs to embrace the feedback that she receives from management. She does not need to create conflict with her managers for being more critical of her management style. She has taken on a new role and has been given much more responsibility as a leader. She went from overseeing 3 employees to multiple teams of employees. She needs to understand that her managers are going to be more involved than usual. She also needs to understand that the feedback she is receiving is to help her succeed in her new role. It's crucial for Chris to embrace the coaching and learning opportunities that her supervisors provide to her. To follow up with that, Chris needs to embrace her new leadership role. She must adapt to her new responsibilities. She cannot rely on 1 or 2 employees in her team anymore. She must regain the trust of all of her team members by showing respect to each and every one of them. She needs to provide opportunities for all of her team members to grow through different projects and team building activities. It will take time, but through coaching and feedback from her managers, Chris will be able to regain the trust and respect from each of her team members. As a result, she will be able to flourish in her new leadership role. Lastly, IKEA needs to implement a performance review structure plan for the new position that Chris is in. This is challenging for IKEA because this is a brand new position for the organization, but they need to set clear expectations for Chris so that she is aware how her performance is being measured. Objectives need to be clearly laid out for her, and she needs to receive continuous feedback so that she is aware of how she is performing. Once these expectations are clearly stated, Chris should be able to reduce the amount of conflict and strife between her and her supervisors, and this will result in much better performance across her entire team.